celebrating the power of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Jenna Johnson, Part 1.
Welcome to another edition of Anything is Possible. We tell stories of possibility, but we do them through the lens of the lives of people whose lives prove that anything is possible. And I'm really happy to have our guest here today, Jenna Johnson. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you, Halloran.
You grew up in California. Take me back to growing up in California.
I grew up in Northern California in the city of Santa Rosa. That's where I was born. And Northern California is not always hot like Southern California is believed to be. We actually have cold nights, sometimes in the 40s and 30s. We've even had snow before, which
Wow.
it's rare. But growing up in California, I think when you're born there, you don't realize how different things are there until you leave.
Tell me about your mom and dad.
My mom is Sharon, and my dad is Johnny. My dad actually still lives in California, near Petaluma, and he also kind of goes back and forth between Petaluma and the Sierra Nevadas in Chester. And he's 75 years old. He'd be so happy that I'm sharing that with you. And my mom, Sharon, lives in Bean Station, Tennessee now. So she's fairly close to where I live. It's about a 45-minute drive from where I live, which is in Blaine, Tennessee.
When I say the word water, what's the first thing you think?
The first thing I think of is probably oceans and just the natural water that's around. I love the lakes here in Tennessee, that we have so much water here. Even though we don't have oceans, we do have lots of lakes. So I probably think of the natural water first.
When I say the word swimming, what do you think?
A swimming pool and the feeling of the water when I'm inside of the swimming pool.
And what is that feeling?
I think of what it feels like aesthetically first, like what it feels like on my skin when I pull through the water. That's what I think of. And
what do you feel? I know this seems like a crazy line of questioning, but what is it you feel?
What I feel is there's pressure. If you think about what it feels like when you stick your arm in water and move your arm back and forth, there's a feeling of pressure on your skin. And that is a very hard thing to understand unless you've done it over and over again. I mean, most people just, know what it feels like to maybe tread water for a little while, jump into a pool, play around, but they don't think about the pressure and the different ways you can turn your hand and arm in the water as you move through it. So it's kind of hard to describe in words.
Yeah, but when you went to describe it, and by the way, Jenna is a two-time Olympic gold medalist, and we're on our way to that story. But the reason I asked you about water and swimming and what does it feel like, because as you were expressing yourself, immediately, did you notice what happened with your arms?
I started moving my arm around.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's so much a part of who you are, that's immediately what you did. And, learning from you, life really is about feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Swimming has a feeling and your life has a feeling. And as we kind of unpack the possibility of your life, I want to move beyond just the standard questions to what does it feel like to be Jenna? What does it feel like to swim in that world? Jenna Johnson is my guest. You're watching Anything is Possible. Part 2, or segment 2, coming up in just a moment.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
He goes, I think you should consider swimming on a club team where you get in, most days of the week and go to competitions year-round. And I thought, well, I really do like this. Why don't I go ahead and try that? So when I was 12 years old, I pretty much told my parents what I was going to do.
Welcome back to Anything is Possible. My guest is Jenna Johnson. So we were talking, I asked you about growing up in California, and I asked you what it felt like to swim. You were talking about that, and you started moving your arms. You said there's pressure and that kind of thing. When did you start swimming competitively?
At the age of 8.
And why did you start swimming competitively?
It's funny, it really just started with some neighborhood friends who were swimming on a team that was local at a country club that had tennis courts and a swimming pool. And they were on the swim team, and they were my friends in the neighborhood, and they said, Jenna, why don't you just come and swim with us? It's really fun. So I thought, sure, what the heck, I'll try it. So that's how I started.
So you didn't have this as a great intent. So when you went to try it, what was it about it that made you go, wait a minute, I love this?
Well, I didn't really have that feeling about it right away. When I first got in the water to swim, I just was really all about trying to learn the different steps of each stroke. And I was a good student. I would listen to the coach very intently and try to do exactly what the coach told me. Being in water, I think swimming pools in general, most people think of them as being a place to play and have fun. So that element was already there. But getting in the water and doing a practice or a workout, you know, that was hard. So I realized that being a swimmer wasn't just all about, woo, this is fun, I'm doing somersaults and handstands, but I was going to be swimming back and forth a lot. And at the age of 8, it was kind of more of a social thing and a learning thing. But then after a few summers went by, because I just swam in the summertime, is when I did my competitions, I started realizing that I was pretty good at it. And when you start realizing you're good at something, it spurs on a lot more motivation to work harder. So that's kind of where it all started.
So getting better makes you want to get better.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So do you remember that turning point when you realized, was there a competition after which you got out of the pool and you said, I'm pretty good at this? Well,
what happened was, it wasn't exactly at a certain moment or a certain swim meet. It was more of a conversation, I think, that I had with my coach. So I swam in the summertime, and the summer swim season is very short. It's only about 10 to 12 weeks long at the most. So I would swim in the summers at the age of 8, 9, 10, and 11. And then when I was 12, you know, I had been doing that for 5 years. That would have been my 5th season. My coach noticed that, you know, most of the time I hopped in the pool, I was winning the race. And I was beating kids that were older than I was, and going first in the lane and moving up and swimming with the older kids to have a challenge. So my coach at the time said, you know, Jenna, you're pretty good at this for only swimming several months out of the year. Think if you swam every month of the year, how good you would be. He goes, I think you should consider swimming on a club team where you get in, you know, most days of the week and go to competitions year round. And I thought, well, you know, I really do like this. Why don't I go ahead and try that? So when I was 12 years old, I pretty much told my parents what I was going to do.
And what did you tell them you were going to do?
I said, Mom, Dad, I'm really good at this, and I think I want to join the Santa Rosa Neptunes. It was the local year-round swim team, and it was a natural for me to go there because it was close by also.
Now, did you tell them, I'm going to be an Olympian?
Not at all. It didn't happen.
Wasn't on the radar?
No, not at all when I was 12, nope.
But, okay, so help me with the chronology, because you're 12 when you just decide to be on a club team, but aren't you at the Olympics 4 years later?
Yes.
So you've got to explain how you go from just saying, I'll be on a club team, to being at the Olympics at age 16. How did that happen?
Well, when you look at it chronologically, it looks kind of unbelievable. But first of all, I was almost 17, so that's closer to 5 years, because my birthday's in September and the Olympics are in August. So it was right before I turned 17, so that gives you one more year there. Really, it's looking back, it looks like a whirlwind or something, but when you're in the middle of it, you have no idea what you're heading for. So at the age of 12, for me, and I've told you this before, we're friends, and we'll talk about that later, why I get to see you every week, but I've told you kind of the way I set goals and the way I look at life might be a little simpler than people think. When you're just a 12-year-old, you're looking at what's kind of right in front of you. You see where you are and you see the next step up. And you just kind of look at what's right there, just one step away. And you might not even know about the things that are way up here, 10 steps up, being the Olympics, international competition, and that kind of thing. So for me, I was just really, I guess you could say, naive. I really didn't know what was out there. I knew about the Olympics, but that wasn't in my radar, like you said. I was just looking at the next step, which was the next swim meet up, you know, at my level. So I started out at the city level, right, you know, then the state level. You know, I was just doing stuff around the state. And then when I started to get a little bit older, like 13, 14, 15, I started going to meets that encompassed swimmers that were pretty high up in the country. And, you know, really, I wasn't even thinking about anything to do with the Olympics until I was probably 14 to 15. So it really didn't start clicking in my head until then.
So it doesn't click in your head until 14 or 15.
No.
You are being generous giving yourself till 17. So this window really is about a 1.5, 2-year window,
yes,
where it just becomes serious. No, but maybe the science of achievement is really that. Maybe it is you don't look too far down the road. In fact, you master the level that you're at, and then you reach for the next one. It is a sequence of steps and building blocks. And maybe that served to your advantage because that became a competitive advantage as well, because you could look at the race you were in, or you could look at the lap you were on. You can focus in the moment, yes, a little bit more. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I know this for a fact, and sometimes it can be a negative thing, but I think it's mostly positive. I have what I call tunnel vision. I am so focused on what is right in front of me that I'm even guilty of, like, for example, if you and I were having a conversation and there were lots of people around us, I would be so focused on you, I wouldn't even notice the people around. Even if they were jumping up and down and going, Jenna, Jenna, can I talk to you next? Jenna, can I have your autograph? Not that they would do that now, but I would not even notice that. I do that when I'm driving. I'll be driving down the road thinking really intently about something, and there'll be someone next to me beeping their horn trying to wave, and I don't even hear it or see it. So that kind of perspective has really helped me in my life to focus on what I'm doing right there, right in front of me. So that's definitely my way of doing things.
Were you born with that, or did you train that?
I was born with it.
Really?
Oh, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Can you teach people to do that?
I think I could. You know, I don't know if I've ever really tried to teach someone that, because I don't think I realized it was such a great attribute. I think I thought it was maybe a downfall, but looking back, it definitely was a good thing for me, because I was going through, you know, we all have our lives. And when you're a kid, there's a lot happening in your life outside of just what you're doing in the water or your sport. There's your school, your family life, you know, and through the time that I was really reaching my pinnacle in swimming, my parents were going through a lot of hard times, and they ended up getting divorced right before I made the Olympic team. So I had a lot of tumultuous times to wade through and swim through, literally, during that time.
Pressure.
Pressure. Yep.
Yeah, why don't we take a break? When we come back, I want to pick up in your story, because now we've got you at about 15. Now we're a year and a half away from the Olympics, and you've got family stuff to deal with while trying to be one of the best swimmers on the planet. And you're just cresting 16, 17 years of age. So I can't wait to hear what happens next. We'll be right back. You'll hear the rest of her story coming up. Jenna Johnson on Anything is Possible.
Coming up.
I was more, in my mind, an underdog. And I love being an underdog. I'd rather be there 99 times out of 100. Because when you're on the top, you hear that quote, it's really lonely at the top, and it's true.
Welcome back to Anything is Possible. My guest is Jenna Johnson. So we're talking about your story. She's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, but you didn't set out to be one. Just a quick review. Some friends from the neighborhood when you were about 8 said, hey, we swim up at the country club. It's fun. You go and start doing it. You start to swim in summers. Coach says to you, you're doing pretty good for just swimming in the summer. What happens if you swim year round? So you decide to become a club swimmer, and you start winning competitions, and basically you start stacking achievements. stacking those achievements brought you to the opportunity to try out for the Olympics?
Sure did.
Let's pick up there.
Well, every country has their own way of picking their Olympic team, but for swimming, the way that you qualify is you have to go to a meet called the Olympic Trials. It's set up specifically to pick the Olympic team. And it's extremely high pressure because you have a certain day that you swim the event that you're trying out for, and that's all you get. And to get to the meet, you have to have a time to qualify to get there.
What was the time for you that year?
I believe, I can't give you the exact seconds, but for example, the 100-meter butterfly was my best event at the time, my best chance or best shot, other than the 100-meter freestyle, which is easier because there's a relay involved, so they pick more swimmers for that. So I had the 100-meter freestyle and the 100-meter butterfly. The qualifying time at the time, this is Olympic distance, so it's 100 meters, was probably around 1:01 or something like that. 1 minute, 1 second, something.
That's fast.
Don't quote me on that. But,
yeah, okay.
I was doing like 1:03s, which these days is not considered real speedy, but back then it was. My coach knew that I could get down to the low 1 minutes, like 1 minute something in the 100-meter fly. And
how many laps is 100 meters?
Well, an Olympic-sized pool is 50 meters long.
So it's down and back.
Down and back. Now, international competition is usually Olympic distance, but there's also a 25-meter distance. And in the United States, we use 25-yard pools a lot still because we have our collegiate swimming scene, and they do all short course. They call it 25 yards.
All right, so you've got 1 day, 1 chance, 2 events.
Correct.
What happened?
My coach, I remember the conversation. My coach was named Guy Miller of the Santa Rosa Neptunes. We had a conversation. It was during like a fundraising event we were having for our swim team at the time. And he told me that he thought that I not only had a chance to go to the trials, but I had a chance to make the team. And I remember just looking at him going, do you really mean that? Like, I was 15 at the time. And I think I was surprised that he thought I was that good.
Isn't it something, and because you are a coach now as well, isn't it something how people can lend you faith?
Yes.
Right? They believe in and for you until you catch up, right?
Yes.
And so how important was it for you to have people in your life that kept believing that the next stack was possible?
It was imperative. I kind of look at that in a different way too, like almost like planting little seeds, little faith seeds. When I used to give, after I made the Olympic team and I still had a year of high school left, I used to give a lot of, I got invited to a lot of public events, church events, and I got to get up and speak and talk about my experience. And I remember coming up with an analogy that is along those lines. And what it is I imagined like a glass vase that had a little tiny crack in the bottom of it. And whenever somebody, a coach, a parent, a friend, would give me a compliment or a stroke, it would be like pouring a little bit of water in that vase. And the vase would rise up higher and higher, and the higher it got, the better I felt, the more confidence. But there was a little crack, so you know, it would drip out over time and it needed to be refilled. So I really like to emphasize that with parents and kids, that the confidence, that jar of confidence, has to be refilled. You can't just fill it one time and walk away. There has to be constant nurturing, compliments. You know, it has to be true, not to just build someone up when it wasn't true, but like true compliments and strokes and support from a lot of people, yes.
So you live life by the clock.
Right.
Right, because your coach could say, I think you're capable of it, but the clock either confirms or denies that truth. What was it like then I'm 15 years old, to live that kind of life where people are pouring into your pitcher or your vase of faith, but the clock is working every day to make that crack wider? to make you doubt, because to be the best in the world is a very specific thing. It is not a general thing. It is not a, you have to be 1/10 of a second better than 500 people in the world or 300 people in the world. What's that like?
Well, you have to understand my perspective going into the trials, the Olympic trials, was a very unique one. I was more, in my mind, an underdog. And I love being an underdog. I'd rather be there 99 times out of 100. Because when you're on the top, you hear that quote, it's really lonely at the top, and it's true. I really liked being kind of the person coming in from, I mean, there were expectations.
Because they don't see you coming.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there were people that expected me to make it, but I don't think I realized how big that was. I think I still thought of myself as the underdog. My perspective of the whole thing was really healthy for me, so I didn't put all this pressure on myself.
Why don't we take a break here? Part 2 of our interview, because we got to have 2 parts to hear the story. We're just unfolding, because I've got some questions for you. Boy, do I have some questions for you. We're leaving the story on this episode right as she's qualifying for the Olympics. And now when we come back in our next episode, Jenna goes to the Olympics. And I am going to ask her, you win 2 gold medals at the Olympics at the age of 16, 17. What do you do with your life after that? You'll find that out next episode. Anything is possible. I'm Halloran Hill. This is Jenna Johnson. Believe that it is because it is.